Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know the Christmas narrative according to the Gospel of Matthew? In a previous video, we contrasted the differences between the Christmas narratives of Matthew in contrast to those of Luke. In this particular video, we're going to focus almost exclusively on the Gospel of Matthew. Most scholars suggest that the Christmas narratives were probably the last thing to be written in a Gospel, simply because they reflect many of the key themes and concerns that show up in the Gospel. Therefore, they reflect the situation and the various issues that the community was facing. Matthew's community was facing a number of issues which he tries to address in his gospel. The most significant issue revolved around the acceptance of Jesus as the Messiah. Some Jews accepted Jesus as the Messiah, while other Jews did not. And there was a tension between the two groups over the issue of Jesus. The other significant tension that the community was experiencing was whether they, as people who had accepted Jesus as the Messiah, should also invite and welcome Gentiles into the community who were interested in being disciples of Jesus. And so these issues became key, and still are, the key dominant issues throughout the entire gospel. And Matthew writes his gospel in order to address those situations and the issues that they're facing. And so when Matthew begins his Christmas narrative, he begins with a genealogy that's rooted in Jewish history, primarily talking to Jewish community. And he begins his genealogy with beginning with Abraham, then going down to David, and then going down to the Babylonian exile, and then ending with the birth of Jesus. These are significant people and events in the history of Judaism, and Matthew roots Jesus in those events as the long-awaited Jewish Messiah. Matthew also does something strange in his genealogy by including 5 women, 4 of which are really Gentiles, and yet Gentiles contribute greatly to the advancement of Jesus' bloodline, resulting in the ultimate birth of Jesus. So that Jesus' bloodline has Gentiles in it. And this is Matthew's way of saying that we, as disciples of Jesus, should also be welcoming and accepting of Gentiles into the community of Jesus. The shift now goes to the very birth of Jesus. Now we have to remember that the Jewish community was a patriarchal community, focused on the male members of the community. And therefore, in his Christmas narrative, Matthew focuses exclusively on Joseph, and Mary has little or nothing to say in this narrative. Mary and Joseph are a betrothed couple who are living in Bethlehem in a house, and yet they're betrothed but not living together yet. There was a custom at that time to betrothed was the official marriage ceremony, if you want. But Joseph, the male, would prepare the house, and Mary would continue to live with her parents till the house was ready, and then there would be a final living together in the house. Well, before the coming to live together in the house, Joseph discovers that Mary is pregnant, and is really very distraught about this and decides to divorce her quietly rather than create a scandal, because he doesn't know who the father is and what Mary did and so on. However, in a dream, Joseph receives a message to, first of all, accept the child that Mary is carrying, because this child is destined for great things for the Lord. It speaks about his mission and ministry, and then commissions Joseph to actually name the child when the child is born, thus giving the child social, economic, political, and religious legitimacy. So Joseph awakes from his dream, does exactly as the angel says, accepts Mary, and wait for the child to be born. And eventually, when the child is born, Joseph names him Jesus, according to the message of the angel. The story then shifts from there to the Magi from the east. These are Gentiles from the east who wish to come following a star to bring gifts to the newborn King of the Jews. They stop in Jerusalem to ask directions from Herod, the Jewish king, and Herod is distraught when he hears about the newborn King of the Jews, paranoid about his own authority and his own kingship, and asks the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem where the child's to be born. The prophecies, which Matthew consistently uses from the Old Testament, the prophecies predict that the child will be born in Bethlehem. And so Herod sends the Magi to Bethlehem and asks them to return back to him, and when they found the child, so he too can worship them, the child. The Magi go to Bethlehem, and they follow the star that lands over the house of Mary and Joseph and Jesus, and they offer gifts to the child Jesus, and then they receive the message to go back home, not from on a different route and not return to Herod. Herod, realizing that he's been tricked, orders that all the children 2 years and under in Bethlehem be slaughtered so as to remove any threat to his kingship by this newborn King of the Jews. Meanwhile, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus receive a message to flee to Egypt from the suppression of the possibility of the death of the child, and they flee to Egypt like a refugee family, fearing for their lives from an oppressive ruler. They stay in Egypt till the death of Herod, and when Herod dies, they receive a message from an angel to return back to their home in Bethlehem, for it is safe now. However, when they do return back to Bethlehem, they realize that Archelaus, the son of Herod, is in charge of Judea, and they're afraid to return to Bethlehem. And so what they do is they decide to travel all the way north to Nazareth in the province of Galilee, and here Jesus will grow up in a loving family and will eventually, when he begins his public ministry, will be known as Jesus of Nazareth. And so Matthew's Christmas narrative is filled with all sorts of tensions, even premonitions of death, which probably are prefiguring the ultimate death of Jesus that will occur as an adult. But it's also filled with trust and confidence and hope in God, who will guide the life of this child and will eventually bring him to the fulfillment of the promises of the building the kingdom of God when Jesus becomes an adult and begins his ministry. So I hope this has helped to at least explain just a bit of the unique features of Matthew's Christmas narrative, and I hope that you will return again to more Do You Know series questions to explore more about the Christmas narrative, especially in the Gospel of Luke. Thank you very much.